Bonjour, bienvenue en Chine, et merci d'être venu sur notre plateau. The Guimet Museum boasts one of the largest collections of Asian art outside of Asia. What did you discover there since you arrived at the museum that shook up your understanding of Asian cultures?
The Musée Guimet in Paris is in fact the most important Asian art museum in Europe and in the first Asian art museum in the world. So of course it's a very rich museum. We have more or less 60,000 artworks. Of course, if you arrive in the museum as a visitor, you will not see all the 60,000 items. But that means that it's really the opportunity to discover all type of Asian art. It's for us very important to give the feeling for our visitors that, of course, they do a trip to Asia. Some European visitors don't even know where is Cambodia, where is Indonesia. Of course, they know where is China, where is India. So it's really a discovery of Asia. And here, what I like, I should say, it's of course the richness of the collection. You really have the feeling to be in Japan, in India, in China, but it's also a human-size museum.
Do you have favorite objects? Des objets préférés, chouchou?
I have some chouchou. But it's always a difficult question when a journalist asks me, what is your favorite object? Imagine my problem, we have 60,000 objects, so I could just spend 1 hour with you saying all the list of, but one of my favorite objects is a Chinese object. This object is a vase, a blue and white vase from the Yuan dynasty. Just the vase is totally blue and you have a white dragon. Very pure, very simple. The shape is perfect. And so for me it's not a Buddha, it's just a vase, but it symbolizes what I like in Chinese culture and Chinese civilization.
Now, I know there are more than some 20,000 objects within the Chinese collection at the museum. This collection right here, what have you learned through this collection about China and about the West by way of Chinese art?
Of course, we are very lucky to have a very rich Chinese collection. First of all, some ancient bronze collections from ancient China. Very amazing pieces. We were very lucky to have the donation of Tang Dynasty objects, also from a Belgian collector several years ago. And of course, all our decorative art department has a lot of porcelain, ceramics. I think we have one of the richest collection of porcelain in Musée Guimet due to many important collectors and lacquers, etc. And what you say is very true. Of course, we learn through this collection about Chinese art, Chinese techniques, material, the jade. We devoted an exhibition several years ago about this precious material of stone of jade. So we learn about, when we look at our paintings, we also have very nice paintings from the Ming dynasty. So we can really discover what is China through its art. But you're totally right, and I like to say also that it's a European vision of Chinese art. Maybe to precise what I want to tell you, we have important collection of Tang Dynasty figures in terracotta. Horsemen, polo women, polo players, etc. And I was last weekend here in China, in Xi'an, the capital of the Tang dynasty, and I could discover all the relics you have here in China about the Tang dynasty. Gold objects, silver objects, monumental stone decor, mural paintings 4 meters high, and I just thought that we don't know anything for our collection about the Tang dynasty, but it's typical of what European people could collect on the market from the end of the 19th century, during all the 20th century, because this was what was attractive for European collectors, because it was for the bourgeoisie, it was good taste to put those figurines in their salon, etc. So that's why I often say to my Chinese friends, come and see the Musée Guimet. Of course, it's not Versailles, it's not the Louvre, it's not French art, but you will understand what is the European taste of Chinese art. And I think it's very interesting also to develop this narrative on Musée Guimet. It's not Asia looking at Asia. It's really the European vision of Asia during the 19th century and the 20th century.
I can tell this is going to be a celebration of sorts at the museum next year, and not only because there's going to be the Paris Summer Olympics, but also because next year marks the 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties between China and France. What do you hope to achieve in this regard?
For me, as new president of this museum, it's a real opportunity because, of course, our responsibility is to be very educative for our European visitors about those Asian cultures. And to have such a possibility of celebration makes things easier, because everyone on the high political level, on the administrative national level, in our different museums, we want to organize this celebration, and we are all working in the same direction, trying to make it as an event. So of course, when I heard that it will be the celebration, I immediately decided to say, okay, 24 will be the Chinese year in Musée Guimet next year. And of course, it's not just one shot for me. It gives me the idea that in the future, such a museum should do it with India, should do it with Japan, with Korea. So we are already working on an Indian year in 26, because I think it gives attractivity to the museum for an audience, rather than saying, okay, we have one exhibition from May to July, and okay, and so what? But to say, okay, there is a Chinese place in Paris this year, or an Indian place in Paris, it's the place to be. I think it can be very attractive for people.
At the museum, one almost has the privileged view of the singular splendor of each Asian culture, and at the same time, the collective sheen that they exude as a whole. As such, what stands out for you in terms of a common force, way, or philosophy that threads these Asian cultures?
I will first start by saying, of course, maybe what is our French culture is rationalism coming from the ancient Greek culture. We just had an exhibition that closed last week about Asian medicine. So we introduce our public of meditation, for instance. Everyone now wants to do yoga. So there is a real curiosity of Western people to what I sometimes call Asian philosophy. Even, I don't know, meditation, is it a philosophy or not? So it's not the question today, but I see that young people that usually don't like museums in West. Here I see it's different. You have many young people in museums. In West, no, they prefer going to cinema, etc. But I see that Musée Guimet is for them very attractive. Of course, all those young people, as we know, love mangas, love K-pop culture. So Musée Guimet gives them the key of new value that are not the European value, but they are more and more attractive for the young generation. And so it's very, very interesting to see how those objects that in fact are difficult to understand for us, where when you are in front of Buddha or of porcelain or a Ming painting, it's not, we don't know Chinese, we can't read the calligraphy, we don't know literature. So everything could be very difficult to understand, but I see that what is very attractive for those European audience is that they, because they like yoga now, because they like meditation, they like to be Zen, those new value of our very, very difficult everyday life with COVID, etc. They like to be Zen, to have, and so they need to learn what it is through our collections.
Well, as we're talking about Zen, in the circle of life, things appear and disappear. How do you look at the preservation and transmutation of our heritage? If it's a natural process, much like wildfires, then to what extent should we interfere, and to what extent should we guide?
When you are a curator, you have to think about those questions for the objects. You have the responsibility. And our philosophy for the objects is to do the maximum to keep it in the shape, in the conditions they are when you take it, with no restoration if possible, no rebuilding, no repainting, just preserve it, even if you cannot read the iconography, respect time on this object, and just do what you can do to preserve it with a good light, good temperature, good humidity, and so this is our responsibility as a curator when you have a very important heritage, but it's the humanity heritage. Of course, it's Chinese, it's Japanese, it can be French, but it's the humanity heritage. So that's why I love, of course, now I'm president, but I was curator, and I loved this job as curator because you have a big responsibility on heritage, and of course it gives you also a philosophy of life for yourself.
Then what about the way that we are still preserving and observing these cultural entities in a museum setting today? Is there anything that we can do to change that?
It's a very important question, and you know, we started to think in Musée Guimet about a big renovation in the years to come. As director of museums today, we have all the same type of questions. How to be attractive today for this young generation? We have to jump from, at least in Musée Guimet, from a 20th century vision to a 21st century vision. So what does it mean? I have more questions than answers. One is how to introduce technology, because we are lucky now to have a lot of possibilities of digital tools, and I like to use it in exhibitions, in storytelling. It helps us to have digital tools when you see a vase or when you see imperial furniture coming from a palace. You show it on a podium with lights, but technology, digital screen can give the possibility to show to the visitors the context. Another question is, every museum could see that what is attractive to develop a good audience are events, temporary exhibitions. And what is strange is that traditionally 80% of the galleries are for the permanent collection. So you have 20% devoted to exhibitions, to temporary exhibitions, that makes your audience, and 80% of universal heritage, masterpieces, treasures, that are empty or more or less empty. So my real challenge in the years to come is how to become more attractive in the permanent galleries. So we start to have some ideas. Of course, we need, I think, to have a scenography that gives us the possibility to change the presentation, not just to say, okay, here is a presentation for the 20 years to come, but how to create new possibilities every year, every 6 months, that gives the desire to come in the permanent collections because something's happened.
The museum exemplifies this idea of cultural exchange, for instance, between China and France on so many different levels and on a much larger scale. What have we learned through these works of art about how to look at each other from the other person's perspective? And of course, we do know that China and the West share contrasting aesthetics on the notion of perspective in art.
In fact, as a curator or director, we learn when we work with the others. That's why I like to develop, and I'm here for that, to develop relations with my colleagues of Chinese museums, because we both have this responsibility to explain to our specific audience about who is the other. And I want to stay modest. I'm not Chinese. I cannot imagine understanding all about Chinese art, Chinese culture. So I see how it is useful for me to discuss and to work with my Chinese colleagues. And you see, we had a wonderful meeting last week in Beijing and in Xi'an about projects of exhibition that we call more or less Dragon and Phoenix. The idea is through such an exhibition to explain to the Chinese audience, because the project would be in Chinese museum, project of exhibition, is to show to the public the artistical relation between the Western Asia and China during the Tang Dynasty and later. So I was saying, with my culture, specialized in Iranian art, you see, for me, the phoenix in Chinese art comes from Iranian art. And so my colleague says, no, look at such an object. We already had phoenix here, and we think that the phoenix inspired the Iranian through Chinese art. And for me it was really very interesting, because of course we will organize this exhibition here, and we have to be adapted to the Chinese vision of this. So this is one part of my answer.
Thank you so much for these fascinating insights. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup aussi.